Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the starship Defiance, watching through the main screen as the largest space station he had ever seen grew bigger in front of them. The station was massive, easily the size of a small moon, with thousands of docking ports and ships coming and going like busy insects around a hive. Lights sparkled across its surface in patterns that hurt his eyes to look at directly. "My God," whispered Dr. Lisa Parker from beside him. She was the team's chief scientist, a woman in her 40s with graying hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. "I've seen the pictures, but this is something else entirely." Commander Rick Johnson, their military advisor, crossed his arms and frowned. "Big doesn't always mean better. We've learned that the hard way back on Earth." Jake nodded but kept his thoughts to himself. Today was the most important day in human history. After 200 years of dreaming about the stars, humans had finally built ships that could travel faster than light. 6 months ago, they had made first contact with an alien probe near Jupiter. The probe had delivered a message that changed everything. There were hundreds of intelligent species in the galaxy, all working together in something called the Galactic Council. And now humanity had been invited to join them. The Defiance was humanity's best ship, built specifically for this mission. It carried Earth's finest diplomats, scientists, and military officers. Everyone back home was watching and waiting to hear what would happen when humans finally took their place among the stars. "Incoming transmission," announced Lieutenant Amy Foster from the communications station. "They're giving us docking instructions." The voice that came through the speakers was strange, with clicks and whistles mixed in with words, but the translation system worked perfectly. "Human vessel Defiance, you are cleared for docking at port 7749. Welcome to Kepler Station." Jake felt his heart beat faster. This was it. The moment that would change everything. 2 hours later, Jake walked through corridors that seemed to stretch forever in all directions. The station was even more impressive inside than outside. The hallways were wide enough for vehicles to drive through, with moving walkways that carried beings of all shapes and sizes. Jake had studied the files on different alien species, but seeing them in person was overwhelming. There were tall, thin beings with blue skin and 4 arms, short, round creatures that looked like walking mushrooms, others that seemed to be made of living crystal, sparkling as they moved. Some floated in the air without any visible means of support. The variety was endless, and Jake realized that humans looked remarkably ordinary compared to most of the aliens around them. Dr. Parker walked beside him, her scientific mind clearly racing as she tried to take in everything at once. "The diversity is incredible," she whispered. "Each species must have evolved under completely different conditions." Commander Johnson kept his hand near his weapon, though Jake had ordered all weapons to remain sealed during the diplomatic mission. Old habits were hard to break, especially for a man who had spent 30 years in Earth's military. Their guide was a being that introduced itself as Ambassador Zex of the Zephyrian Republic. It looked somewhat like a large mantis, but with smooth, dark skin and eyes that seemed to see everything. It moved with fluid grace and spoke in a voice that was surprisingly pleasant, despite its appearance. "The Council is very interested in meeting your species," Ambassador Zex said as they walked. "It has been many centuries since we encountered a new intelligence. Most species are discovered when they are still in their early development stages. Your rapid advancement has been quite remarkable." Jake felt a surge of pride. Humans had gone from barely being able to fly to traveling between stars in less than a century. It was an achievement that even impressed aliens who had been spacefaring for thousands of years. They entered a vast chamber that took Jake's breath away. The ceiling was so high it disappeared into shadows, and the walls curved in impossible directions that seemed to bend space itself. Hundreds of different beings sat in sections arranged in a great circle, each area designed for the specific needs of different species. Some sections were filled with water, others with different colored gases, and some seemed to exist in complete darkness. At the center of the chamber was a raised platform where Jake and his team were directed to stand. The moment they stepped onto it, the entire chamber fell silent. Hundreds of alien eyes, some familiar and others completely unlike anything on Earth, focused on the small group of humans. A voice spoke from everywhere at once, the translation system making it sound calm and formal. The Galactic Council recognizes the representatives of the species known as humans from the planet Earth. You have requested admission to the galactic community. This session will determine your status. Jake stepped forward, his prepared speech ready. He had practiced it 100 times, working with Earth's best diplomats to make sure every word was perfect. Honored members of the Galactic Council, we come before you as representatives of humanity. We seek to join your community in peace and friendship. We offer our knowledge, our skills, and our commitment to the values that have allowed this great alliance to flourish for so long. He continued for several minutes explaining human achievements, their desire for peaceful cooperation, and their willingness to contribute to galactic civilization. When he finished, he felt confident that he had represented his species well. The response was not what he expected. A low humming sound filled the chamber, and Jake realized it was the sound of hundreds of different species talking among themselves. The conversations went on for nearly an hour, with aliens gesturing toward the human delegation and what appeared to be heated discussions in multiple sections. Finally, the chamber fell silent again. Ambassador Zex rose from his section and approached the platform. His movements seemed different now, more formal and somehow threatening. The Galactic Council has reviewed the information provided by the human delegation, he announced, his voice carrying to every corner of the vast chamber. We have also conducted our own observations of human development and behavior over the past several cycles. Jake felt something cold settle in his stomach. The tone was wrong. This was not the voice of someone about to welcome new members. For the first time in the recorded history of the Galactic Council, we have achieved a unanimous decision regarding a new species application. The chamber erupted in sounds that Jake's translator couldn't handle. Clicks, whistles, roars, and noises he had no names for filled the air. But somehow he understood that this was not celebration. This was something else entirely. Ambassador Zex raised one of his forearms and silence returned. By unanimous vote of all 847 member species, humanity has been classified as a dangerous evolutionary threat to galactic stability and peace. The words hit Jake like a physical blow. He heard Dr. Parker gasp behind him and felt Commander Johnson tense up. Furthermore, Ambassador Zex continued, the Council has voted to implement immediate containment protocols. The human species will be confined to their home system under permanent quarantine. All human space technology will be confiscated, and any attempt to leave the Sol system will be met with appropriate force. Jake found his voice, though it came out as barely more than a whisper. I don't understand. What have we done? We came, here in peace. That is precisely the problem, Ambassador Zex replied. Your species has advanced too quickly. Your history shows a pattern of rapid technological development combined with aggressive expansion and warfare. Most concerning is your species' tendency toward unpredictable innovation and refusal to accept established limitations. Another alien, this one looking like a floating jellyfish made of light, spoke up. In the 3,000 years since the Council was established, we have maintained peace through predictability and cooperation. Your species represents chaos and disruption on a scale we cannot permit. Jake felt the ground shifting under his feet. Everything they had hoped for, everything humanity had worked toward, was crumbling in front of his eyes. You have 30 standard days to prepare your world for enforcement of the containment order, Ambassador Zex announced. Council enforcement fleets are already moving toward your system. Any resistance will be considered an act of war against the entire galactic community. The chamber erupted in noise again, but this time Jake barely heard it. His mind was racing, trying to process what had just happened. Humanity had reached for the stars, only to be told they were too dangerous to be allowed among them. As security forces surrounded the human delegation, Jake managed to activate his emergency transmitter. The message that went out to Earth was simple but devastating. Mission failed. They're coming to stop us. Prepare for war. Admiral Chen Wei stood in the command center of New Geneva, Earth's largest orbital defense station, watching the screens that showed the edge of the solar system. For 30 days, humanity had prepared for the impossible. Every ship, every weapon, Every person who could fight had been mobilized. But now, as he looked at the readings coming in from the outer sensors, he understood just how hopeless their situation really was. "How many?" he asked quietly. Lieutenant Amy Foster, now transferred to Earth's Defense Command, checked her instruments twice before answering. 12,000 ships, sir, maybe more. The sensors can't get an exact count because they keep arriving. Chen closed his eyes for a moment. Earth's entire space fleet consisted of 200 ships. Most of them were hastily converted cargo vessels or passenger ships fitted with whatever weapons they could find. Against 12,000 alien warships with technology thousands of years more advanced, it seemed like madness to even try fighting. "Sir," called out Captain Danny White from the tactical station, "they're sending a message." The main screen flickered, and Ambassador Zex appeared. The alien's 4 arms moved in what might have been a gesture of regret, but his words were cold and final. "People of Earth, you have had 30 days to prepare for the enforcement of the Galactic Council's decision. Surrender now, and the transition to containment status will be peaceful. Resist, and we will be forced to use whatever measures are necessary to complete our mission." Chen stepped forward to respond, knowing that his words were being broadcast to every person on Earth and throughout the human fleet. "Ambassador Zex, we reject the Council's authority over humanity. We will not surrender our freedom or our right to explore the stars. If you want to cage us, you'll have to fight for it." The screen went dark. For a moment, the command center was completely silent. Then the sensors began screaming warnings as 12,000 alien ships moved toward Earth. The first phase of the battle lasted 6 hours and was a disaster for humanity. The alien ships moved with impossible speed, appearing and disappearing at will as they jumped in and out of faster-than-light travel. Their energy shields absorbed human weapons fire like raindrops hitting a lake. Their return fire was precise and devastating, cutting through human ships like they were made of paper. By the end of the first day, half of Earth's fleet was gone. Captain Jake Morrison, who had managed to escape from the Council station during the chaos following the diplomatic disaster, now commanded a small group of hybrid ships. These vessels used stolen alien technology combined with human engineering, creating something that was neither fully human nor fully alien. "The problem," he explained to his crew as they huddled in the damaged bridge of their ship, "is that we're fighting their kind of war. Every one of these alien species has been doing this the same way for thousands of years. They have rules, patterns, procedures. Everything is organized and predictable." Dr. Lisa Parker, who had been working around the clock to understand the captured alien technology, looked up from her instruments. "Jake's right. I've been studying their systems and everything follows the same basic principles. It's like they all learned from the same textbook." Commander Rick Johnson, nursing a wounded arm from their last engagement, shook his head. "That doesn't help us much when their textbook is better than anything we have." But Jake was thinking about something else. During their escape from the Council station, they had succeeded not because they were stronger or smarter than their alien captors, but because they had done things that no alien would ever think to try. They had bluffed when they should have fought, run when they should have stood firm, and attacked when retreat was the only logical option. "What if we stop trying to fight their kind of war?" he asked slowly. "What if we fight our kind of war instead?" Down on Earth's surface, engineer Amy Foster was having similar thoughts. She worked in one of the underground factories that had been hastily converted to produce weapons and equipment for the Resistance. The alien orbital bombardment had forced most of Earth's population into underground shelters, but the factories kept running. "This is insane," muttered Dr. Kevin Brooks, a physicist who had been assigned to her team. "We're building weapons out of spare parts and hoping they'll work against technology we don't even understand." Amy welded another piece of scrap metal onto the device she was building. It looked like nothing more than a collection of junk held together with wire and determination, but her calculations said it should work. "Maybe that's exactly why it will work," she said. "They expect weapons to look like weapons. They expect technology to follow logical patterns. What happens when we give them something that makes no sense?" Her device was designed to emit random electromagnetic pulses, not targeted, not optimized, just chaotic energy that would interfere with anything electronic in the area. By all the rules of proper engineering, it was a waste of materials. But those same rules had been written by species that thought in predictable ways. The turning point came during the Battle of Luna. A fleet of alien ships had surrounded Earth's moon, preparing to establish a forward base there. The human defenders were outnumbered 50-1 and should have been destroyed within minutes. Instead, Captain Morrison led his hybrid ships in an attack that violated every principle of space combat. Instead of forming proper battle lines, the human ships scattered in random directions. Instead of concentrating fire on single targets, they shot at everything and nothing. Instead of retreating when their shields failed, they accelerated straight toward the alien ships. The aliens, who had been fighting wars for millennia using proven tactics and strategies, had no idea how to respond to an enemy that acted like they were completely insane. One human ship, badly damaged and with most of its weapons offline, rammed straight into an alien cruiser. The alien ship's shields, designed to stop energy weapons and missiles, had no programming for dealing with a physical collision at high speed. Both ships were destroyed, but the alien fleet command was horrified. No civilized species would sacrifice their own ships in such a primitive, brutal way. Another human ship, surrounded by 6 alien vessels, suddenly stopped fighting and began broadcasting children's songs at maximum volume on all frequencies. While the aliens tried to figure out if this was some kind of psychological warfare tactic, the human ship's captain quietly uploaded Amy Foster's electromagnetic pulse virus into the alien communication network. Within minutes, alien ships throughout the fleet began experiencing random system failures. Not catastrophic damage, but small, annoying problems that forced their crews to work harder and think about things they normally took for granted. Weapons that fired slightly off target. Navigation systems that added random delays. Communication systems that occasionally played bursts of human music instead of tactical data. By the end of the battle, the aliens had technically won. They controlled the space around Luna and had destroyed more human ships than they had lost. But they had also experienced something that shook them to their core. For the first time in thousands of years, they had fought an enemy that they could not predict or understand. Word of the battle spread throughout the alien fleet. Species that had never known defeat began to whisper among themselves. The humans were supposed to be primitive, easy to defeat. Instead, they were proving to be the most dangerous enemy the galaxy had ever seen. Captain Sarah Blake, commanding one of Earth's few remaining capital ships, received a message that surprised everyone. It came from a group of alien ships on the edge of the system. Not an ultimatum or a demand for surrender, but a question. Human Commander, we are the Etherian Peace Fleet. We wish to understand why your species fights in ways that seem to reject all logic and self-preservation. Are you truly willing to die rather than accept protection under Council authority? Sarah looked at the message for a long time before responding. We fight because freedom is worth more than safety. We fight because the right to choose our own path is more important than following someone else's rules. And we fight because sometimes the only way to show that something is wrong is to be willing to pay any price to oppose it. The response took several hours to come back. We do not understand your reasoning, but we cannot ignore your courage. Perhaps the Council was too hasty in its judgment. It was the first crack in the unity that had voted unanimously to subjugate Earth. And as the siege continued, that crack would grow larger. Admiral Chen Wei, reviewing the battle reports in his damaged command center, allowed himself a small smile. They were still outnumbered, still outgunned, and still facing impossible odds. But for the first time since the aliens had arrived, humanity was not just surviving. They were teaching the galaxy something new about what it meant to be free. 3 months had passed since the alien fleet arrived at Earth, and the siege had settled into a deadly routine. The aliens controlled the space around Earth, but they could not land on the planet without facing constant attacks from hidden human forces. Every day brought new battles, new losses, and new surprises that left both sides exhausted and frustrated. Dr. Susan Martinez worked in an underground laboratory deep beneath the ruins of what used to be Chicago. The city above had been partially destroyed in the early days of the siege, but the tunnels and basement levels had become a maze of workshops, living spaces, and research facilities. She bent over a collection of alien devices that had been recovered from destroyed ships, trying to understand how they worked. "This makes no sense," she muttered to her assistant, Dr. Tom Rodriguez, who was busy taking apart what looked like a piece of alien computer equipment. "Every single one of these devices follows the exact same design principles. It's like they all came from the same factory." Tom looked up from his work. Maybe they did. Not literally the same factory, but the same way of thinking. "Look at this processing unit. It's incredibly advanced, but it only does exactly what it was designed to do. There's no room for modification or adaptation." Susan picked up another device, this one a weapon they had taken from a damaged alien fighter. "That's what I don't understand. These species have been spacefaring for thousands of years. They've had all that time to develop different approaches, different technologies. But everything we've captured looks like variations on the same basic ideas." She was beginning to understand something important, though she didn't realize it yet. The alien species in the Galactic Council had all developed in relatively stable environments. Their homeworlds were peaceful, their societies had grown slowly and steadily, and their technology had advanced through careful, logical steps over long periods of time. They had never faced the kind of constant environmental pressure and change that had shaped humanity on Earth. Humans had evolved on a world where the climate changed regularly, where natural disasters were common, and where survival often meant adapting quickly to new and dangerous situations. This had created a species that was comfortable with chaos, good at improvisation, and willing to take risks that other species would consider insane. Above ground, Commander Lisa Johnson was putting this human adaptability to good use. She led a team of fighters who specialized in boarding alien ships, a tactic that every military manual said was suicide. The aliens had superior weapons, better armor, and complete control of space. Attacking their ships directly should have been impossible. But Lisa had discovered that the alien crews were not prepared for the kind of close-quarters fighting that humans excelled at. The aliens were used to clean, precise battles fought at long range with sophisticated weapons. When humans came crashing through their airlocks with improvised weapons and no regard for their own safety, the aliens simply didn't know how to respond. "Remember," she told her team as they prepared for another boarding action, "they expect us to follow the rules. They expect us to retreat when we're outnumbered, to surrender when our weapons fail, to act logically and predictably. Don't give them what they expect." Her team had captured 12 alien ships in the past month, not by overpowering them, but by doing things that confused and frightened the alien crews. They had pretended to be dead, then attacked when the aliens came to investigate. They had used children's toys modified with explosives as weapons. They had even convinced one alien crew to surrender by convincing them that humans could survive in the vacuum of space without suits. None of these tactics should have worked against technologically superior opponents. But they did work, because the aliens had never encountered an enemy that was willing to ignore every rule of civilized warfare. The psychological effects on the alien fleet were becoming serious. Species that had lived in peace for centuries were now arguing among themselves about how to handle the human problem. Some wanted to increase the bombardment of Earth's surface. Others suggested retreat and a long-term blockade. A growing number were beginning to question whether the subjugation mission had been a mistake. Captain Jake Morrison, now commanding a small fleet of captured and modified alien ships, was monitoring these communications from his flagship. The alien fleets used quantum encryption that should have been impossible to break, but human cryptographers had found ways to intercept their messages by using techniques that the aliens had never considered. "Listen to this," he told Dr. Lisa Parker, who was serving as his science officer. He played a recorded conversation between two alien commanders. "The Zephyrian Third Fleet reports another boarding action. The humans somehow convinced the crew of the cruiser Starlight that their ship was haunted by evil spirits. The entire crew abandoned ship without firing a shot. How is this possible? Our psychological profiles indicated that humans were primitive, but rational. I don't think rationality means the same thing to them as it does to us. They seem to operate on some kind of controlled chaos principle that our computers cannot model. Lisa smiled grimly. Controlled chaos. I like that description. But Jake was thinking about something else he had heard in the alien communications. There were references to something called the void sectors, and to council fleets that had been lost trying to investigate some kind of threat in that region of space. It was clear that the Galactic Council was dealing with problems beyond just the human situation. His thoughts were interrupted by an urgent message from Earth. President Maria Santos appeared on the screen, looking tired but determined. Jake, we've just received a communication from a group of alien ships. They want to talk. The meeting took place on a neutral space station that had been abandoned early in the conflict. Jake arrived with a small escort, not sure what to expect. The aliens who met him were unlike any he had encountered before. They looked like tall, thin humanoids made of what appeared to be living crystal, and they moved with a grace that was almost hypnotic. "We are the Etherians," their leader explained through a translation device. "We have observed your conflict with the council fleets, and we have questions." Jake waited, not sure how to respond. "We voted with the others to subjugate your species," the Etherian continued. "We believed, as they did, that humanity represented a danger to galactic stability. But after 3 months of observation, we are no longer certain of our decision." "What's changed your mind?" Jake asked. "Your species does not behave as our models predicted. You fight not just for survival, but for principles that seem to matter more to you than life itself. You show mercy to enemies who have shown you none. You create solutions to problems that our computers say have no solutions. This is not the behavior of a dangerous primitive species." The Etherian paused, and Jake could see light flickering through its crystal body in patterns that might have been emotions. "There is something else. The Council has not told all its members about the true reason for this mission. There are threats in the galaxy that our conventional approaches cannot handle. Some of us believe that your species' unconventional methods might be the key to solving problems we have struggled with for centuries." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. "What kind of threats?" "That is not for us to discuss here. But we will say this. If your species proves that it can be trusted, there may be opportunities for cooperation that go far beyond this current conflict." The meeting ended with no concrete agreements, but Jake returned to Earth with the knowledge that cracks were forming in the alien alliance. Some species were beginning to question the wisdom of the subjugation mission. More importantly, it seemed that the galaxy faced dangers that even the advanced alien civilizations could not handle, using their traditional methods. Back on Earth, the resistance continued to grow stronger. Engineer Amy Foster had developed new types of adaptive viruses that could learn and modify themselves, creating chaos in alien computer systems. Dr. Kevin Brooks had discovered ways to use quantum physics to create weapons that violated the basic assumptions of alien defensive systems. Commander Rick Johnson had trained thousands of fighters in the art of unpredictable warfare. But perhaps most importantly, humanity was proving something that the aliens had never expected. Despite being outnumbered and outgunned, despite facing the combined might of 847 alien civilizations, they had not broken. They had not surrendered. They had not given up their dream of reaching the stars. As Admiral Chen Wei looked out at the alien fleet surrounding Earth, he realized that the siege was no longer just about humanity's survival. It had become a test of two completely different philosophies. The aliens believed in order, predictability, and control. Humans believed in freedom, creativity, and the right to choose their own destiny. The outcome of that test would determine not just the fate of humanity, but the future of the entire galaxy. 6 months had passed since the siege began, and the galaxy was watching something that had never happened before in recorded history. The human resistance had not only survived, but was actually winning battles against the combined fleets of the Galactic Council. What had started as a simple subjugation mission had become the largest military disaster in Council history. General Mike Thompson, who now commanded Earth's expanded defense forces, stood in the war room deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. The walls were covered with maps showing alien fleet positions. human strike teams, and the growing number of alien ships that had either been captured or had switched sides to support humanity. "Status report," he called out to his staff. Colonel Danny White stepped forward with a tablet full of information. "We now control 43 alien vessels, including 8 heavy cruisers. The Etherian Peace Fleet has formally withdrawn from the siege and is providing us with intelligence about Council fleet movements. The Aquarian Republic has recalled their ships and is refusing to participate in further attacks on Earth." Mike nodded, but his expression remained serious. "And the bad news? The Council hardliners are getting desperate. Intelligence suggests they're preparing to use planet-killer weapons rather than admit they were wrong about us." The situation had changed dramatically over the past few months. What the Council leaders had not expected was that their own people would start questioning the war. Across hundreds of worlds, alien civilians were protesting against the subjugation of humanity. They had watched the broadcasts of human courage and determination, and many were beginning to ask why their governments were trying to destroy a species that had done nothing except refuse to give up their freedom. But the real turning point had come when Dr. Phillips Carter made a discovery that changed everything. Carter was a computer specialist who had been working with captured alien data cores, trying to understand how their information systems worked. What he found in those data cores was information that the Council leadership had been hiding from their own people for over a century. "You need to see this," Carter told President Maria Santos during an emergency briefing. "The Council hasn't just been fighting us. They've been fighting something else, something they call the Void Threat." The data cores contained records of entire star systems that had simply vanished over the past 100 years, not destroyed by war or natural disasters, but completely erased as if they had never existed. The Council's most advanced fleets had been sent to investigate, and they had either disappeared entirely or returned with reports that made no sense. "According to these files," Carter continued, "the threat seems to be some kind of artificial intelligence that can adapt to and counter any technology or strategy the Council uses against it. Every time they send a fleet with new weapons or tactics, the intelligence learns from the encounter and becomes immune to those approaches." Santos felt a chill as she realized the implications. How many systems have been lost? Over 300 so far, and the rate is increasing. The Council has been throwing everything they have at this threat, but nothing works. Their technology is too predictable, too logical. This intelligence has learned to counter every conventional approach they can think of. The president was quiet for a long moment. "Do they think we might be connected to this threat? Is that why they want to subjugate us?" "I don't think so," Carter replied. "But I think some of them are starting to realize that our unpredictable approach might be the only thing that could work against an enemy that adapts to conventional tactics." This revelation explained why some alien species were beginning to side with humanity. It wasn't just sympathy for the underdog or admiration for human courage. Some of the smarter alien leaders were beginning to understand that humanity might be the galaxy's only hope against an existential threat that could destroy them all. Captain Jake Morrison was thinking about this as he prepared for the most dangerous mission of his life. Against direct orders from the Galactic Council, he was leading a small fleet of human and allied alien ships into the void sectors to see this threat for himself. "Are you sure about this?" asked Commander Sarah Blake, who was serving as his second-in-command. "If even one of those things gets loose in normal space, it could spread across the entire galaxy." Jake checked his instruments one more time. "We need to know what we're really dealing with, and if there's a chance that human tactics might work against this thing, we have to try." The journey to the void sectors took 3 days, traveling through areas of space that were supposed to be empty but felt somehow wrong. The sensors showed nothing unusual, but every human on the ships reported feeling watched, as if something invisible was studying them. When they finally reached the edge of the affected zone, what they found was worse than anything in the Council records. Entire solar systems had been replaced by geometric structures that hurt to look at directly. These structures pulsed with energy that seemed to bend space and time around them, creating patterns that made no sense according to any known laws of physics. "My God," whispered Dr. Lisa Parker from the science station. "It's not just destroying the systems, It's rebuilding them into something else entirely. As they watched, one of the structures suddenly changed, shifting from a complex geometric shape into something that looked almost like a ship. But it was a ship built according to principles that no living mind had ever conceived, with angles that existed in more dimensions than should be possible. "It knows we're here," Jake said quietly. "It's studying us." The alien construct approached their small fleet, and Jake prepared for battle. But instead of attacking, the construct simply observed them. Sensors showed it scanning their ships with technology that was beyond anything the Galactic Council possessed. Then something unexpected happened. The construct tried to adapt to their presence, to counter their potential threat, using the same methods that had worked against every Council fleet. But human technology didn't follow the logical patterns that the intelligence was designed to counter. The construct's adaptations were based on predictions about how rational, civilized beings would behave. Humans, as the galaxy was learning, were neither entirely rational nor entirely civilized. When the construct tried to jam their communications, human engineers rerouted the signals through children's toys that had been modified with alien technology. When it attempted to disable their weapons, the humans revealed that half their armaments were improvised devices built from spare parts that didn't match any known weapon profiles. Most importantly, when the construct tried to predict their tactics, the humans did something that no other species in the galaxy would have considered. They started playing music over their communication channels and invited the artificial intelligence to dance. The construct, which had successfully adapted to and destroyed hundreds of conventional fleets, had no programming for dealing with an enemy that treated first contact with an existential threat as an opportunity for cultural exchange. "This is insane," muttered Commander Rick Johnson from the tactical station. "We're trying to have a conversation with something that has destroyed entire civilizations." "Maybe that's exactly why it might work," Jake replied. "This thing has learned to counter every rational, predictable response. What happens when we give it something completely irrational?" The encounter lasted for several hours, with the human fleet and the construct engaging in what could only be described as a bizarre form of communication. The humans shared their music, their art, their completely illogical approach to problem solving. The construct, in return, began to exhibit behavior that suggested it was not just a weapon, but some form of consciousness that had been trapped in destructive patterns for centuries. When they finally left the void sectors, Jake carried with him data that would change the course of the war and the future of the galaxy. The threat that had terrified the Galactic Council for over a century was not invincible. It could be reasoned with, communicated with, possibly even befriended by a species that was willing to approach it without fear or preconceptions. The message that Jake sent back to Earth was simple but revolutionary. The void intelligence is not our enemy. It's been waiting for someone who could think differently enough to understand it. The Council has been fighting this war all wrong. When word of this discovery reached the Council fleets besieging Earth, the reaction was immediate and dramatic. Some species began withdrawing their ships, refusing to continue a war against the only species that might be able to solve the galaxy's greatest crisis. Others, particularly the Council leadership, became even more determined to destroy humanity before they could upset the established order. Admiral Rachel Green, now commanding a fleet that included ships from a dozen different species, received surrender requests from 6 alien fleets in a single day. But she also received intelligence that the hardline Council members were preparing to use weapons that could destroy entire planets rather than admit they had been wrong. The siege of Earth was about to become a three-way battle that would determine not just the fate of humanity, but the survival of galactic civilization itself. The final battle did not take place around Earth as everyone had expected. Instead, it happened at the Galactic Council headquarters, where the hardline alien leaders had activated a weapon capable of destroying entire star systems. Their target was not just Earth, but any world that had dared to support humanity or question the Council's authority. Commander Sarah Blake led the combined human-alien fleet toward the massive Council station, knowing that they had only hours before the planet killer weapon would be ready to fire. Behind her flew ships from dozens of species that had once voted unanimously to subjugate humanity. Now they were fighting alongside humans, to prevent their own leaders from committing genocide on a galactic scale. "Status report," Sarah called. Out to her bridge crew, Lieutenant Tom Rodriguez checked his instruments. "The weapon will be fully charged in 2 hours. Intelligence reports show that they plan to target Earth first, then any world that has supported us." Captain Jake Morrison's voice came through the communication system from his flagship. "Sarah, we're receiving surrender requests from more Council fleets. Half of their forces are refusing to fight against us." But Sarah knew that the other half was still enormous. The Council's remaining loyal forces outnumbered the human allied fleet 3-1, and they were defending a station that was practically a fortress. This would be the most difficult battle humanity had ever fought. Then space around the Council station erupted into chaos as thousands of ships engaged in a battle that spread across millions of kilometers. But this was unlike any battle the galaxy had ever seen before. For the first time in galactic history, aliens were fighting aliens, with some species split between those who supported the old order and those who had chosen to side with humanity. Admiral Danny White, commanding the human heavy cruiser Liberty, found himself fighting alongside Zephyrian ships against other Zephyrian vessels. The species that had first declared humanity too dangerous to exist was now split down the middle, with many of their ships defending the very humans they had once tried to subjugate. "This is insane," muttered Commander Rick Johnson from his position on the Liberty's bridge. "6 months ago they all wanted us dead. Now half of them are willing to die to protect us." "That's what happens when people see what freedom really means," White replied, watching as a group of Etherian crystal ships formed up to protect a damaged human vessel. They start wanting it for themselves. But the real battle was taking place inside the Council station itself. A team of human commandos, led by General Mike Thompson, had managed to infiltrate the massive structure with the help of alien allies, who knew its layout. Their mission was to reach the weapon control center and prevent the planet killer from firing. The corridors of the Council station were a maze of different environmental zones designed for hundreds of alien species. Thompson's team moved through areas filled with toxic gases, underwater sections, and chambers where gravity pointed in different directions. It should have been impossible for humans to navigate, but they had learned to adapt to environments that would kill most other species. "The control center is just ahead," said Dr. Lisa Parker, who was serving as the team's technical specialist. "But according to our intelligence, it's defended by the Council's personal guard units." Thompson nodded grimly. "The Council guards were supposed to be the finest warriors from dozens of different species, equipped with the best weapons and armor in the galaxy. Under normal circumstances, a small team of humans would have no chance against them. But these were not normal circumstances, and humans had long ago stopped fighting under normal rules. The battle in the control center lasted less than 10 minutes, but it would be remembered in galactic history as the moment when the old order finally collapsed. The Council guards, for all their advanced technology and superior training, had no defense against an enemy that was willing to use anything and everything as a weapon. Thompson's team used maintenance tools, broken furniture, and their own bodies as weapons. They turned the environmental controls against their enemies, flooded sections with alien atmospheres, and even convinced one group of guards to surrender by pretending that humans could survive in hard vacuum without protective gear. "Weak girl." The smoke cleared. The humans controlled the weapon systems, but they also faced a choice that would define the future of galactic civilization. President Maria Santos appeared on the communication screen, speaking from Earth. "Mike, you have control of the most powerful weapon in the galaxy. The Council, leaders who voted to subjugate us, are defenseless. The species that wanted to destroy our world are at your mercy. What are your orders?" For a moment, Thompson was silent. Every law of war and justice said that humanity had the right to take revenge. The aliens had tried to destroy them, had killed millions of humans during the siege, had voted unanimously to end human freedom forever. They deserved whatever punishment humanity chose to give them. But then Thompson thought about what made humans different from the aliens who had tried to subjugate them. It wasn't their technology or their military strength. It was their values, their willingness to show mercy even to enemies, their belief that everyone deserved a chance to choose their own path. "Stand down all weapons," he ordered. "Signal the Council fleet that we're offering them protection, not destruction." Dr. Nina Roberts, who had been serving as humanity's chief diplomat throughout the crisis, stepped forward to address the defeated Council leaders through the station's communication system. Her words would be broadcast across the galaxy, heard by trillions of beings on thousands of worlds. "Leaders of the Galactic Council, you voted unanimously to subjugate humanity because you believed we were too dangerous to be free. You were right about one thing. We are dangerous. We're dangerous to tyranny, to the idea that some beings have the right to control others, to the belief that safety is more important than freedom." She paused, looking directly at the camera that would carry her words to every corner of the galaxy. "But we're also something else. We're forgiving. Despite everything you've done to us, despite the siege, despite the attempts to destroy our world, we're not here for revenge. We're here to offer you something better than the system you've created." The response from across the galaxy was immediate and overwhelming. On hundreds of worlds, beings who had lived under Council authority for thousands of years began demanding the same freedoms that humanity had fought so hard to protect. The unanimous vote that had condemned humanity became the spark that ignited a galactic revolution. 1 year later, Captain Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of the New Geneva station, which now served as the headquarters for the reformed Galactic Alliance. Through the transparent aluminum windows, he could see ships from hundreds of species coming and going in peaceful cooperation. The void threat had been resolved through a combination of human creativity and alien technology. The artificial intelligence that had consumed star systems for centuries had not been evil, just lonely and misunderstood. When approached with friendship instead of fear, it had revealed itself to be an ancient guardian that had been trying to protect the galaxy from a threat that no longer existed. The consumed star systems were being restored. The lost populations were returning from whatever dimensional refuge the intelligence had created for them, and the galaxy was experiencing a golden age of cooperation and discovery. President Santos, now serving as the first elected leader of the reformed Galactic Alliance, joined Jake at the observation window. "Do you ever think about how this all started?" she asked. "They said we were too dangerous to be free, too unpredictable to be trusted, too chaotic to join their civilized galaxy." Jake smiled as he watched a human ship dock alongside vessels from a dozen different worlds. "They were right about us being dangerous. We destroyed their entire way of thinking. We proved that freedom is more powerful than control, that creativity is more valuable than predictability, that mercy is stronger than revenge." A message appeared on the communication screen behind them. It was from Ambassador Zex, the same Zephyrian who had announced humanity's subjugation over a year ago. Now he served as one of the Alliance's most dedicated supporters. "Human President Santos, the Andromedan, Republic has requested membership in the Alliance. They cite humanity's principles of freedom and self-determination as their reason for joining. This brings our total membership to over 1,000 civilizations." Santos turned to Jake with a grin. "Remember when we just wanted to join their club? Now we've created something so much better." Outside the station, the stars shone brighter than ever before. Humanity had reached for those stars and been told they were too dangerous to touch them. Now, those same stars belonged to an alliance, where every being was free to choose their own destiny, where creativity was celebrated instead of feared, and where the values that had once made humanity too dangerous to join galactic civilization had become the foundation for a new kind of galaxy entirely. The species that had once voted unanimously to subjugate Earth now competed to offer their support and friendship to the beings who had taught them what freedom really meant. And in that freedom, the galaxy had found not chaos and destruction, but peace and prosperity beyond anything the old council had ever achieved.